Hello and welcome to Blockchain Gaming World with me, John Jordan. So, final video on the demo of Guild of Guardians, which is now closed. So, actually, they closed it. um, I guess they probably closed it on Australian time, but when I woke up in the morning UK time, it already shut down. So, probably if you're in Australia, you've got an extra day. They were shutting it down on the 21st, which is today. So, I didn't get to complete it. So, there were three different worlds with, I think, 12 levels in each. I didn't quite finish the 12 levels of the third one. Definitely, yeah. Some conclusions. Obviously, this is a demo version, so very early, and a whole bunch. Yeah, some of the deeper functionality wasn't in there, so you're sort of difficult to you can't really judge it like it would be a finished product or even a product in sort of a closed beta. This was like like an alpha, I would say. So some very superficial points. I noticed people who also played the demo on Twitter, sort of not necessarily complaining, but pointing out sort of pathfinding wasn't all that good, and sometimes people sort of got stuck in the scenery and blah blah blah. I mean that kind of stuff to me is sort of irrelevant. That sort of gets kind of sorted out when the game goes live. One sort of again a minor thing, but like the most obvious thing from a gameplay point of view, I felt the speed was a bit fast, and I think that maybe accounted for people sort of also getting stuck in the scenery. Just when you move the sort of the virtual stick, the characters move very quickly. And while you could have that in a game that had a lot of sort of Twitch combat, this isn't really a Twitch combat game. This is more like a sort of a idle game, really. Oh, it's shut down. There we go. So from a gameplay point of view, I thought it was a pretty polished product at this stage. I guess the really interesting bit, and the bit I probably should have done a bit more work on, is summoning characters. So you basically started off with one character, and then you got you got enough to have a complete set. So 4 in a squad, and then as you played the game more, you got these characters to summon. So I summoned 3 more characters. Unfortunately, by that stage, I sort of got so far in the game that my first 4 characters were so leveled up and had all the gear that there was no point sort of swapping them in for the other characters. And I guess that'll be a sort of a key part of the sort of the meta when the game comes out, is you're going to probably have dozens of these characters, because that's what happens in these free to play RPG character collection games. You end up with loads and loads and loads of them, and most of them are sort of not useful. So there was a sort of option, I think, where you could merge 12 of them together to get quite what that gave you. I don't know, but there was a sort of like a burning option where you could sort of burn 12 of them and get some new one. I guess higher level, presumably so it's a rarer sort of one. But also you would sort of end up with these sort of situations where you might, you know, you might be sort of mixing and matching. So there definitely seemed to be some functionality around that. I didn't really play around with it, where you might sort of look at certain characters work really well together. So you might want to potentially have different numbers of squads, and in the UI in the game it actually allowed you to have like 5 different squads set up for sort of different. Presumably different types of levels, maybe, or certainly if you're doing PvP, you might want to set up different squads and fiddle around with them that way. So that's definitely something to be looking at. I would guess more generally, I would think the really interesting part, and again, this is very much not within the demo, but having played a lot of free to play mobile games, and Guild Guardians is going to be a free to play mobile game with all this blockchain stuff in there as well. It's still going to need, I think, a lot of, or I'll be interested to see how they deal with live ops. So live ops is basically when you have a game going live and it's free to play game. Most people don't spend any money, but they play the game and they progress at a certain speed. But one of the things that keeps them retained and potentially gets them spending is there's lots of new stuff going on. So there's like limited edition events which may have sort of characters that only be available in that event, and maybe you can grind your way out to get them. Maybe it's sort of easy to pay for them because they're never available again. Obviously, with the blockchain, if these characters are going to be on the blockchain, people can then sort of get them and trade them, even when they're no longer available in the game. So that'll be sort of an interesting sort of thing. But really, and I guess not just for Guild of Guardians, but more generally for these sort of new experiences we're getting, which are sort of free-to-play mobile games with blockchain attached to them. The question is, what's the balance they have between the sort of blockchain games we've seen at the moment, which is buy NFTs and sort of earn tokens and buy more NFTs and get and sell tokens, and that sort of dynamic, which is obviously very financially driven, and works for a sort of small number of sort of wealthy people and not so much for everyone else, compared to free-to-play mobile games, which is obviously you don't spend any money at all, most people. But then there's this content coming all the time, so you have this massive funnel of content, which is really expensive to create. and that's why most free-to-play mobile games sort of go bust, because they can't sort of balance getting enough people in there to sort of spend money with the dev team they need to sort of do all these events all the time, and do all this sort of live ops sort of stuff. So blockchain, I guess, will the games like Guild of Guardians, I think, will be somewhere in between. You don't want to have the situation where you're doing loads and loads of live ops, but that's sort of probably where we will end up in 5 years' time, I suppose. So it was good to see. As I say, in general, I thought it was pretty polished. I guess equally there potentially would be some criticism of people on the gameplay. The gameplay was certainly how I played it, was more like an idle type game where I sort of let the AI sort of deal with stuff, and it was more about sort of just being in the experience. I thought the sort of the level designer stuff was pretty nice, or the sort of the artistic style of the level design. The enemy characters, I thought, progressed really well. We started off with the sort of kind of smallish ones, and as you went on, there was definitely a sort of progression of better characters, more of them on screen, more enemies to fight, and you sort of felt like there was a sort of, well, there wasn't like a massive difficulty sort of thing going on there. It felt like there were more and more characters, so it sort of felt harder. And I think a lot of these games, it's sort of about not necessarily whether it's harder or not, just making you feel like it's harder, which can be done in multiple ways. So definitely like a thumbs up from me for the demo. Definitely be interested in playing some more of that. I will point out that although the blockchain stuff's not attached to Guild of Guardians NFTs are available at the moment. I wouldn't necessarily say people should be buying them now. But it's just as sort of, I think I may have one or something. I think I bought one. So obviously the game's not coming out for another 6 months, so it's not necessarily the time to be going out and buying them now. But clearly, if this is a game that you think might be interested in, keep an eye on the price. I suppose I'm sure it'll be going up and down like all these things do. So there we go. A good job from the developers. So that is Immutable is the developer or sort of publisher, and the company, the sort of co-developer is they're called Stepico, I think they're called, based out of Poland, I believe. So they're sort of doing some of the dev work as well. So good so far. Thumbs up. Looking forward to the next demo.